Our topic today is Hartman Value Profile and Human Resources. And I'm excited to share this with you. I want to share some insights around how to take potential resistors and to make them your ally and your champion. And the things that I want to share today, I'm going to share 3 work in the world focus areas that I want to reveal that I've found work. I'm going to share 2 things that we must reduce with all our clients, but especially with human resources. And I'm going to share 15 or so different tools with you. And those tools and this PowerPoint and my notes are at this location on my website, and that'll be available to you, pricelessprofessional.com/RSHI 2019. So what I'm going to share with you today are things that I've discovered, because guess what? I didn't do all of them or many of them for a period of time. So these are my mistakes and how I learned to do them better. So I'm here to serve you today. So if you have questions along the way, just stop and we'll handle those. And I've also left a little time at the end for questions. So let's go. Okay, so now here's the scenario. You're talking to an executive in an organization, creating a great relationship, great dialogue. They love your work, they love you, they love the tool, and that executive finds out that human resources has to approve it. Didn't think they did, but now before you can work together, guess what? You have to work and get human resource buy-in. You hear that, your wonderful contact tells you that. What are you thinking and how are you feeling?
Oh, God.
Oh, God? What else are you thinking and feeling?
We're done.
We're done? Yes? Yes, so we've all heard those stories and we've had those experiences, and it is a potential bias that we have, and it is to say, oh no, I want to go in the different direction, please, not HR. But I want to share a different perspective, and that is that we can have a wonderful relationship with human resources. And in fact, when we create that wonderful relationship, they will be our forever friend, client, and colleague. And so that is what we're focused on today. And so as I was thinking about how to describe what I had learned, I want to just tell you a little bit about my experience. I've trained human resource, organizational development folks, internal and external consultants, probably at least more than 100 people in the science of axiology within organizations. And I was trained through TTI Success Insights. In fact, Rick Bauer's wife, Ashley, and Lisa Aldisert that you met yesterday were my trainers in Atlanta in 2005. And I remember when I left the training, I don't think I slept for 3 days, because I knew I had found something that meant something. I think everybody here can tell the same kind of story. And then I trained with the Medfords. I love that picture of them, and went to Knoxville and got coaching from them and attended some of their workshops. Okay, so as we think about how do we work in the world, I was looking for inspiration, and how did I want to share how we work in the world, and what are those things, systemic, extrinsic, and intrinsic, that are going to help us. And so I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I also love my dog, so if we talk more than 5 minutes, I will pop out a picture and show it to you. So a headline story in the Wall Street Journal in October was about PetSmart and Chewy. And we can learn from them and their business decision about how we can work with human resources. So let me tie it together for you. PetSmart bought Chewy, $3.5 billion acquisition. It was the largest e-commerce deal ever. The market said, oh, PetSmart, what are you doing? Chewy cannot compete with Amazon. You have not made a smart decision. It's 2019. Chewy is now worth $11 billion. So it was a smart decision. And the PetSmart CEO is instructive to us because it tells us something that we need to do with our clients as well as with human resources. And he said, I was in it for the long term. I knew they weren't necessarily making money, but they had really high customer retention scores, and it was hard. If I was looking short term, I might not have made this decision. But because I was thinking long term, I made the decision and it worked out. The Chewy founder, how did he create success against Amazon? The mammoth out there is that he had pet lovers on the phone with the people who were calling in, and he was fanatical about customer support and service, and he said, I knew if I won them as a customer, I will win them for life. And so he is beating Amazon. We can beat Amazon. We can, in our own world, whatever Amazon is, we can make these connections with the human resource leaders if we take this mindset. And the first is we have to think long term. So a systemic thought is think long term. If you go slow, a little slower than we tend to want to be sometimes, we go slow, things are smoother. And when things are smoother, you go faster. So go slow to speed up. And I love what I made a note from the presentation. Leonardo talked about today about we have to learn to wait. And you said it right here. You said we have to learn to wait. And that Hartman even said, given time, good will prevail. So if we can take a long-term view, and it will require some of that if human resources is involved, because it's not as expedient. We have to love the science. We have to love our science. We have to love axiology. We need to be in harmony with it. I mean, there have been times, and maybe you all have had them as well as I have, where I've felt uncomfortable with it or I wondered about it. Those days are gone. I know what I know around the science, and I'm in complete harmony with it. And so no matter what human resources says, I'll be like, yeah, I hear you. And they know that I know that the science works and that it's good. So we have to resonate with that. We have to be like the pet lovers. When you call on the phone and you're talking to customer support and you're talking to a pet lover, that's different kind of support than what you're going to get for somebody who doesn't care. And so that plays out in our success. And last but not least, we have to be fanatically devoted to support, no matter who it is we're supporting. It's the executive or the CEO that we'd rather work with, or the human resource leader who's asking you 800 million questions. And this is our model, so I'm creating a little bit of a model. I have done the opposite of these. I've had a short-term view. I'm a strong style, and I like to get things done quick. But I've had to change that, and I'm able to do that. I love the science. I'm in harmony with it. And if you don't love it, it's okay, because I still love it, and I know it adds value. And that, we are energy, so that plays. People feel it, and you're not trying to play anything, but that plays. And then I've always said, okay, client first. Whatever they say they want, I put what they want first. I never am trying to persuade. I'm not trying to persuade human resources. I'm trying to hear what they say they want. And then once I do that, I don't have to persuade, because then I can deliver what they want if I'm fanatically devoted. Systemic, extrinsic, and intrinsic. So my next motivation is from another interest of mine, and it's lessons from two doctors and this podcast. So I'm a little bit of a nutrition nerd, and these doctors have a podcast, and they're talking about low-carb health, and they have the same challenges that we have, which is traditional medicine versus clinicians. So how you were supposed to do axiology and what it takes when we're in the field working. They also feel a real sense of urgency to heal. They have thousands of sick people with diabetes and heart disease, and they have a cure that can help them. And so they feel this sense of urgency. Do you feel a sense of urgency around your tools? I got a tool. It's going to help you. You're going to hire better. Your people are going to be better. We feel that same sense of urgency that they feel. They have a solution that many people are hesitant to try. People don't like change, and don't mess with my food, right? Don't mess with my food. It may heal me, but that means I got to change all my routines. I got to change what my mama gave me when I grew up, and all this comes into play. So we have a solution that people are hesitant to try. Human resources like, we have this way. We don't do hiring like that. We use this tool. So very similar for us. And these doctors have all benefited from this protocol. So they are true believers. They are true believers. We are true believers in our tool. Every person here says, I got so much from my profile, what it said about me and what I know. So very parallel. And what they do and what they're doing in their practice and on these podcasts is two things that we can do. They're taking people where they are, and they're reducing the resistance and complexity. So those are our lessons. So for example, I don't say, if you take all carbs or low carbs and you do these macros, this is what's going to help you to a hesitant person. You just say, take bread off the table. Don't eat that. So they do one step at a time, even though they have this full protocol that they'd love everybody to take. We can learn from that. They're into intermittent fasting. And they say, start with just try to go 12 hours. 7 to 7, don't eat. And then once that works, go 13 hours, 14. So the incremental. And those are our lessons for us as we are working with human resources or any client. So there's our model. And I heard Ron Price say this, and I've copied you, Ron, shamelessly for years, and that is all models are useful, but most of them aren't perfect. But this will be our model today to think about as we think about human resources. So when we think about reducing resistance, something we've heard today, and I'm in this situation, in this section, I'm talking about on the sales call, in the hiring situation. So we're using our tool for hiring, we're using our tool for coaching, we're using our tool for training, so all situations. Connection before precision and information. That's when I said, I don't persuade, I connect first. And we've heard that all couple of days, seems like it's been a week. A couple of days here, intrinsic before extrinsic and systemic. So we apply that. So some of the connecting that we need to do, or that we can do, and it's helped me, is understanding that they're more like us than not. So we see them as an obstacle, but how do you connect to people? You start to understand them. So how are they like us? They're facilitators. They don't have full authority, but they have a lot of responsibility. How do we feel as we're consultants, right? They're passionate about serving people, that most all of the human resource people, they want to take care of the people. They care about the process. Sometimes they're marginalized. Are you ever felt marginalized as a consultant? I mean, maybe. So we have more in common with them than we think we do. So that can help us with our connection. And then realizing that they, and we all know this, but I'll just state the obvious, they have business partners that they have to report to. So if we remember that perspective and we can think about how do we make them look good, because they have business partners that they need to now go present this to, and how do we help them look good, then they're starting to connect with us, and we're starting to connect with them, and then we can share. And this is my favorite quote. It's my guiding principle. I have all the stylistic characteristics of someone who wouldn't do this, but I do this, and almost can't share unless I do this. And it's the greatest compliment that was ever paid to me was when one asked me what I thought and then attended to my answer. So instead of not listening to human resources, trying to figure out how do I make them understand, don't do any of that. Just listen to them, find out what they're looking for, and give it to them. And that only works if we're thinking long term, and we know that in the end, slow is smooth, and smooth can be fast. Another tool that works, it's a very simple thing, but I generally do not share what I think before I ask them what they think. Know you first. Because then all of my answers or all of my responses, it's consultative selling, right? It's facilitation. All of my feedback, all of my responses are related to what they said they think and know. So I have my profile there of their hiring candidate. I have what they said they wanted. I know what I need to talk about, but I'm going to ask them first, what do you think? What did you like about this candidate? Where was the challenge? And what that does is it reduces resistance. It gives you all the information you need, and then you share from the profile exactly what they said they liked and didn't like. Well, when you said you liked them, here's where that showed up in the assessment. Now, when you had some questions, let me tell you, and they're more receptive to hear it than if I just start out and say, this is what you need to do. And then, so intrinsically, if we've connected, this is my basic, I call it the basic debrief process. It's kind of like take the bread off the table. So we've got a full advanced process that I'd love them to do, but sometimes I just need to, the only way they're going to participate is to give this basic process. And it gives a process for them to understand how to debrief the report. They can use the two-step debrief process to train their business partners that they work with and help them understand so they're effective. It helps them be effective. And it also helps me learn more about the job, whether it's coaching or hiring, without having to go through the whole protocol that they are unwilling to do, even though it would be so good for them and it would heal them. They're not willing to do it sometimes. So to reduce resistance and get the buy-in. And I know some languaging that really works is we're looking for strengths, and we're looking for potential gap areas. We look at them and we kind of know their gap areas, but if we're trying to reduce resistance so they even accept the information, the softer language works, and you still can get your point across. So we're looking for matches and mismatches. Human resources particularly, I find, and you might agree, sensitive to judging people, being hard on people. They want the right information, so this languaging, it actually works with individuals and is something I use quite often. So connection before precision. Next is reassurance, not dominance. So reassurance is the reminder, first off, that they, like us, we've had unhappy experiences sometimes with human resources. Guess what? They've had the same thing with consultants. Yeah. So there's some questions there, right? So how do we reassure them without being dominant? And it is to be a bit flexible. So you have a 4-hour process. They say, I got 90 minutes. Are you flexible enough to try to make the 90 minutes work? Are you flexible enough to say, well, intermittent fasting is 16 hours or more? Or can you say, well, I can do, the 12-hour fasting. They'll take a bite. They'll be with you. It'll meet their goals. There'll be buy-in. You're reducing resistance. And that is taking a long-term view, being the lover, and being fanatical about axiology. Simple things that really work with human resources. When I see human resources and they're like this, and then you say something and they let go, one of the things is it's less than 30% of any decision that you make. So that tends to calm them down. It's not the be-all, end-all. We're not dominant here. Let me reassure you. Of course, y'all know the compliance part of it, the EEOC and OFFCP. I know what it is. Yeah, that one. Oh, that you have that. The links are available. I have them on my website. I have them in my briefcase, depending on who I'm going to be talking to. That is reassuring. That drops the shoulders. While we're doing this to them, sometimes they're doing it to us. I want them to drop their hands. What are you going to say, Adina?
I didn't understand what you said about
Less than 30%? So that's language that I use, and it's that assessments are less than 30% of the decision. Okay. Department of Labor, I think, recommends that, and also recommends that you use more than one view. So that language helps. I use something called risk factor, and every time I say there's always a risk, human resources and leaders all go. And you would think that would talk against your assessment, but there's an understanding now. You're not saying that you do this tool and you're going to make a 100% correct decision, but it reduces resistance by actually saying, there's always a risk. And they're like, yeah, speaking of the obvious, but lots of buy-in around that. I do assessment match 5-to-1, and that is and every executive and human resource person who's ever used this with me or asked me, they will not hire without it. And they try to make me or ask me to do it for coaching clients, but I won't apply a marker there for that. But what it is 5 means, according to the assessment, 5 is an excellent fit, less risk. So I make sure they realize, even if you're an excellent fit, there's still some risk. And 1 is poor fit, so that's the in between, and greater risk. So it gives the decision back to them. I'm not telling them don't hire, do hire. I'm just saying you can hire if there are 3, but just know you're taking on some more risk, and there may be a reason for it, and if it is, maybe the background they need, or so I'm not taking ownership. Just like in coaching, we don't take ownership of their development. We also don't, to me, take ownership of their hiring. But what we do is give them tools so they can make the decision. And with human resources, that's how you reassure, not dominate, and reduce resistance. I took and created some interview-based questions using the 6 dimensions with systemic, extrinsic, and intrinsic. That is helpful. That helps them look good. So if they look at they're always, human resources for whatever reason is completely fascinated with the graph and always wants to understand it. And so you do your best to explain, but now, if they don't understand it, but we can say, okay, they didn't score very clearly in this area, here are some questions you can use. So now that gives them something practical, lets them be the hero, and it actually is something they need. So I think that is has been popular and has been reassuring. This is a little tool that we use. I use it in training, or I might use it if I'm talking to human resource executives or managers. They know this, but I will have them calculated on their team. And it's just a simple way without going into a lot of detail. The cost of turnover is a good way for you to make your case, but it also is something that they can go to their leaders and the people they support and make the point. And this book, Top Grading, is also something that is a great resource that all human resource leaders know about it. It's good credentialing, and it backs up all of this information that 1.5 times to 8 times someone's salary, you have a high cost. So I don't spend a lot of time trying to persuade on this. It's after we've made the connection, but this tool seems to get a lot of nods, a lot of like, oh yeah, we need to do a better job. So those have worked. So we need to be curious and not all-knowing. We're trying to decrease resistance, and I can think of a scenario where a consultant was increasing resistance, and it was not too long ago. And I was in a meeting with a mid to large size organization. I was with the CEO and the CHRO. We're both in the client, separate companies, and we had profile results, and we're talking about a vice president of sales that had been there a long time. This consultant was new within the organization. I've been around a while. The consultant used some kind of rough and direct, blatant language around the profile results for this sales vice president. And technically, they were accurate in statements, but not well received. I call it the weaponizing of our tool. And that happens, and I dislike that tremendously. You can say challenges in an assessment, and you can be direct, but you don't have to be rough, and you don't have to be all-knowing. And sometimes when we are acting that way, it's because we're trying to appear to be all-knowing, and that's my bias. And I am high theoretical. I think I know a lot, so that would be a really strong tendency by me, and I've had to really channel that down and not do that, and it does make a difference. And in this case, that consultant is no longer in the organization. And so you can burn bridges, and some of the things that have helped me soften and create more acceptance are these simple words. Well, according to the assessment. So in a coaching call, in a hiring debrief call, I might have 10 executives on the call on a phone. I'm not seeing them. We're debriefing their internal candidates, which is sensitive because they know these people really well. But you're trying to give them feedback about who's a match and who's not. I probably say this 2,500 times during the call. According to the assessment, and just that statement reduces resistance and says, okay, this is what the assessment says. So that's a simple thing. This languaging and these pictures work. What are we talking about here? Strengths. So people like that. It's like, oh, I have strengths. Now we say, what's this? Blind spots. And that languaging works, simple. And you've won when they're saying, well, one of my blind spots is. So they're not feeling angst about it like they're bad or there's a problem. I don't think any of us ever mean to do that, but I think people are nervous about their results, and for human resources, they're nervous about people being upset, to protecting people. We just have to do it all with compassion, and be in our heart while we challenge and we support. And I think you can do both of those. You challenge, and the next sentence you can support, and they're not separate. So the closer we marry those, the more success we'll have with all our clients, but especially with human resources. Another thing that reduces resistance is Hartman's story. So I'm in a client where we've been around for a while. They use a lot of our tool, and they have a new director of executive talent. What's this tool? Why does this company like this? She's OD, PhD. I do something else. Who are you? Why are you here? I don't get it. Why haven't I heard about this tool? Lots of resistance. And so just kind of doing my thing. As she asked questions, I'm sharing. And then she wanted to know about the history, and I told her a little bit about Hartman. And I have a way that I share it now that is working, and it's in the notes. So if you need a little script that works, And as soon as I started to talk about the history and that Maslow, he trained, they were Maslow, they were together, self-actualization. I mean, just use that in regard to make sure if there's an opening that you share that. Also use the history of this institute. You know, if you're an axiology lover, be all in, and that is to be a member, participate, get involved, and just let people, you know, make sure that's on your bio. You're a member of the institute. You're on a committee in the institute. Share Hartman's book. You know, depending, you know, right timing. I know some people you're not going to give that book to, but that also is a way to reduce resistance and get buy-in. And that's one of those moments that I visibly saw the resistance go away and acceptance coming. This quote is also very popular. I use it in if we're doing a discussion and they want to see information about the tool. I always use this. I use a lot of car analogy, so that's why we have the race flag there. So human resources loves this. They know this like we do. And executives kind of know it, but human resource people know this and believe it. And so that is also something that you can use to your benefit. All little things, but drip, drip, drip. You know, every big thing started with a little thing. We add all these little things up and we have a big thing. And we need to help them understand. Now this one really requires having the long view and really, really feeling in your heart that customer service matters, because they may make you a little frustrated because it takes patience to continually answer the questions, to not feel like their questions are critiques. I have a client that I've worked with since 2012, and she's asking me the same questions. I've answered the same questions probably 100 times. And you know, initially I remember thinking, okay, you're really questioning what I know, and I'm feel a little defensive, and now I have come to understand that instead of seeing their confusion as a threat or feeling defensive, see it as interest. She's interested. She'll say, I know this guy. Why is this way? He doesn't do that. And, you know, and so we just walk through it. And every time she gets a little more information, meanwhile, she continually uses the assessments. She's been using them ever since. I mean, I get off a call and I think, she is never going to use them again. With all those questions, I'm thinking we are on the rocks with this situation. And then here comes another order. And then she says, well, I want you on all the coaching calls. So come do all the debriefs. You explain it really well. So, but you will create a forever client, but it is going to take some patience, and it does build trust. I think I had some other examples here. There's a director of human resources who came directly to me through a client, and I couldn't get to the CEO. It's not a large organization, so I should be able to get to the CEO. But who shows up on my doorstep? HR. And so did detailed debriefs with her. She's asking questions. I'm wanting to, at some point I wasn't feeling very patient. You know, it's like, that's why I did a detailed debrief. You don't have to know it all. You have me here. I've been training for years, but I didn't say any of that. Just continually give her and answer questions. She called me quite a lot. She called the other day and said, guess what? CEO said, we're doing great work. He recognized what I'm doing in the field, and he wants to meet you. So, but it took building the trust to do that. It took the long view because it's a challenge. Write, speak, share. It clarifies your thinking and helps them understand. So one of the ways I do that is through my podcast, and I do a lot of episodes related to trimetrics and axiology. And every time, it's like writing a book. I remember years ago, Bill Brooks shared, every time I write a book, it clarifies my thinking. So see your blog writing, see your interviews that you do, see little ebooks that you write, speaking that you do, see that as you clarifying your thought. I will repurpose this. This is going to be use what we're talking about here. I'll change it a little bit, share it with external consultants. You can always repackage that stuff. But the big benefit is your clarity of thinking. The muse steps in and you get new ideas that you never would have had if you hadn't stopped, you know, to actually write or do the book. Or Ron, our prolific writer in the room or author in the room, is nodding his head. So I did an interview with Cliff, which has been well received, and he was awesome. I did another interview with Rick. It's also been well received. I've got lots of feedback on both of those from clients. Oh, when you interview this, I learned a lot from that. And I'm also getting ready to do, I'm going to do 6, I've done 1 on understanding others, but I'm going to do the other 5. So those become development tools. But you can do the same thing. And it's different. And it makes me laugh sometimes, and it's okay, because I understand I have utilitarian in my wheelhouse. People say, well, do you make money on that? Is it profitable? Does it lead to clients? And I usually patiently answer you, but in my mind I'm thinking, heck yeah, it does, because it aligns me. It aligns me to create that. This is my thing to do. It's not for everybody, but you have your thing, that aligns you. You write or you speak, whatever that is. That helps you clarify and think and help them understand. So those are reduced resistance aspects. Let's look at reducing complexity. Drop the technical mumbo jumbo. That's my technical word for what we need to do here. Saw some good languaging on what Habit Finders is doing around their languaging. And so I'm probably going to evolve what I do and maybe look at some of that as wording. These are some images that I use that works with human resources. This now is often showing up in a training class. I may be doing a webinar that's 60 minutes, and I see some giggles. This is watch the progression, because it helps bring them along with you. One, they like this picture because it's saying, we should all like it, but for human resources, particularly sensitive to judging others, depending on the human resource leader you're working with. But these are good people, they're just not a fit. So how do we help them figure that out? And that fit matters. And then from there I talk about 5 areas of fit. And I like listing these 5 areas because it helps uncouple all the areas. Because oftentimes they're thinking of it all as one big bunch. And so they will apply it. So somebody has high axiology scores or Hartman scores and they're not performing, they don't understand why. So if you can separate it out for them, so I use simple language. I don't use the verbiage. The only reason I've got axiology in here is because I'm sharing it with you. And then I use cars. I told you I use car analogy. And so every time I'm talking to them, I'm talking about them through the car language. And so background experience, where they've been, where they're going, that matters to fit. What puts gas in their tank, you can't see it. Their style, you see that. Axiology is their horsepower. You can't see that. But what's their engine? How you could tune up or down a horsepower, and where are they parked? All of that's going to impact performance, and you have to know all of that. And what we're talking about are pieces and parts of that we can help you uncover. And then what really resonates with me, resonates I'm sure with you and with human resources, is under the hood is not visible. So it's going to tell you things that you didn't know, but you're going to find out 6 months down the road. And oh, guess what? If you know it, you can tune it up, just like an engine. You can tune it up, you can make it better, so we can help your people grow. So languaging that works, drops the shoulders, takes off the defensiveness, and a good build that seems to create buy-in. And oftentimes now we've gone through all of this. Maybe they've done the basic process, and so now they're up for some training. How do we get to the under the hood? Now they're asking. So, when they ask, that's a great time to deliver, right? This science, we have a science that does this. And that science is in this graph that you've seen. And it turns out this. So sometimes people don't understand, how is that all connected? Very simple, basic stuff, but it works. So that's my attempt at dropping the technical mumbo jumbo. In training, I do some interactive teach back things. So I get them to own axiology, because they need, if you're training human resource leaders, they need to be able to explain to others what axiology is. And so this is a competition that we do. I break them out into teams. They have a certain amount of time. They have to write a statement of what axiology is in 32 words. Exactly 32 words. And they're all competing. And then they get a prize. And so what's happening? Now it's like, I'm owning this science. I'm going to walk away with 32 words that I can share with the world when anybody asks me, and they're all sharing. So how do you learn? You hear stuff over and over again. So mine's the best. Here's mine. So they're taking ownership of what they do. Another way to talk about the dimensions. I did this virtually. There were 20 people on a virtual call. I didn't know how it would work, but I assigned them dimensions. same kind of thing. They were to come back and share. Human resource people, that they're like to talk and share and let's do and be active. So instead of talking at them, take the dimensions, come back and just teach everybody else. And then what are the examples of, if somebody's high in this, what might you see? If there's someone that has low clarity in this, what might you see? Again, simple little training exercises that gather buy-in. We play Jeopardy, all of that. Take kind of the heaviness out of what we do and the talk at things that we do sometimes. I have a laminated flashcard. I don't ever share the flashcard until they've gone all the way through the process. They now understand what axiology is because they just created a definition. They understand all the dimensions. So now let's apply it. And so this is a little cheat sheet. It's one-sided, two-sided, one page. And that becomes their Bible. They will call me a sales HR person who they don't need to know all this, but once they start getting into it, they want to know it. Okay, I use the card and I have an assessment. Tell me if this is right. What it is, did I guess it right? So that's how now they're owning it, helping them understand. I think our own comfort is with our own results and just comfort. It took a while for me to get there. You have low internal scores or they have low external scores and it's a reliable report. I could talk to anybody anytime about that now. So, and that has dramatically helped me be more effective with human resources because I don't have a holdback. I'm not afraid to share and I know how to share it in a diplomatic way where they can receive it. Initially, I had 18 executives. They had all completed the assessments and I was going to go do a live team day meeting and CHRO wanted to be in on all the calls and all the debriefs before the live meeting, and I was kind of bummed, because there's something magical that happens between just you and the other person on the call as you're going through the results. And it was great that the CHRO was on the call because he was blown away at what happened, the kind of conversations that we had. So we need to figure out, all of us, how to record those. It's kind of like Esther Perel's doing a therapist thing. Have you seen that? It's fascinating. She's recording discussions. I'm getting off track, but she's recording discussions with patients, and then you can listen in. And so that's kind of what was happening, and it's fascinating. They're anonymous, but you can hear what's happening. And so they've been a client since 2014, and they continue today. So it's, as more comfortable we are, the more comfortable they get, and if you can help them participate, that makes a big difference. Last on reducing complexity is we have to make it real, and what I mean about this is have those stories in your back pocket. I thought Dave Blanchard did an awesome job around how he could tell the stories. You had them in his back pocket. I mean, that's something, a skill, and that is something you have to almost plan for it to look like you didn't plan it. Does that make sense? And that's why some of these, writing these articles and the podcast and all of a sudden you've got all this material in your back pocket. So somebody scores low in role awareness and they don't understand it, you've got a story to tell them about that. Somebody's scoring lower on systems judgment, you have a story to tell about how that impacted someone's performance and how they overcame it, what it looked like. So making it real with real stories is super helpful. This quote from Hartman, I always liked it, but it's like, how do you help them understand this? When he said, I don't measure motivation, energy, or drive, I only measure how they judge and think. So yeah, okay. So what do I do with that? What do I do with that? So I have, and you're reminding them, and this happens in training, but it might happen where I'm not using this quote, but they're saying, hey, how come Frank scored so high on the Hartman Value Profile and he is not a strong performer? So I can tell them a story about, and there's a guy named Frank who had the highest score I've ever seen. But when we're talking about the areas of fit, you can go through and you can explain why he was a Ferrari in the garage, but not necessarily doing great in the job based on all these other aspects. And why Bob, who kind of like a Honda, he's a very nice Honda, but not a Ferrari, on his Hartman Value Profile scores, which we can tune those up because that's the engine. All the other things are a great match. So just having those types of stories ready to share, you kind of have to flesh them out. If you're someone who talks to think like I do, I have I have to plan in advance to be effective in telling the story. Otherwise, I'll lose them pretty quick. So that is reduce complexity. Those are the 5 things that I recommend in order to do that I found helpful. Works with all our clients as well as human resources. Reduce resistance. That's where we start. We can't do any of the other reducing complexity if we haven't reduced the resistance. And you have to be an observer of yourself and be willing to watch when, oops, I just amped up resistance. It's all me. And we'll always be learning that. But there are hopefully some of those tools will be helpful. There's our model. If we do these things, I believe, and I've experienced it myself, because like I said, I've done all the opposite of these in my 16 years in my business. Much better today, always learning. But if we do this, we won't feel like this so much. There'll just be another client that showed up on doorstep that probably wants to work with us. When you come from that belief and you say they're a good person and they probably want to work with us, and man, I'd like to be at the CEO, but I'm not right now, so let's have it work. When you have that belief, you go from that to this. And when you have that, it's a lot of fun along the way. And they're with you, and they are forever clients. That's the thing that I have really found. Every human resource professional that I have been able to win over, so to speak, reduce resistance and complexity, as a long-term client that I enjoy working with and has all kinds of insight that can help us, not stop us when they're on our side. So questions, comments?
One of the things that I've heard is I don't do a real good job of resistance. I have so much patience, and but they interviewed well.
Yeah,
I'll say, hire 'em.
yeah.
That's not reducing resistance, that's being a smart ass.
But Jim, you do make it work for you. But when it's not working, you can try the other.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try yours over mine.
Oh. We love Jim Corder just the way he is, but I'd say try that and see what happens.
I have another definition for patience that I saw.
Ooh.
It's what you have to use when there are witnesses that might see you hide the body.
Oh. What you have to use when there are witnesses. Okay. I have to think about that. I'm not fast, I guess. Awesome. Good.
Susie, I think you have a lot of salesmanship skills.
I do?
I think that what I just heard up there is good salesmanship.
Oh, okay. Good. Yay. Okay. So yeah, I like that.
I think along that same note, I'm not an ASP, I'm barely introduced into Hartman, but this is just good consulting.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what this is.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
It's a perfect model for just good consulting. Jargon applies to all things, branding, web design.
Yes.
That's what I viewed in all this. It's very applicable
Oh, good.
and much broader, I think, and much more valuable
Oh.
across a plethora of
Yeah.
industries and a plethora of things, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Thanks.
Are we gonna get the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They're also available now too. My slides and a script, and all the, if you want the laminated jogger card or any of that stuff, it's all there. If any of that would be helpful.
Accumulate the slides and get them available.
We are going to get the slides available
Some way to
too.
be figured out tonight.
Yeah. When I interviewed Cliff, he shared this quote, know yourself, choose yourself, grow yourself, give yourself something greater than yourself. And, I can't think of anything, I'm getting emotional, anything better to do than to do what we do. And I think Axiology gives us the framework to do it. And so give yourself to something greater than yourself, and we are all doing that. So bless us all, and thank you.
Thank you.